Hello people, today I'm taking you through the process I go through when changing strings on an electric guitar. This will apply to most electric guitars, but specifically like a Stratocaster, Telecaster style. This one has a tremolo down at the bridge, and also, even more specifically, tuners that look like that. So it's really easy. I'm going to take you through it step by step, and we'll do this together, show you how. A couple things you're going to need: some strings. Those are good to have. A string winder really helps things go faster, but it's not really necessary. Some cutters for this style tuner is pretty necessary. So you need those, and then a way to tune up your guitar. I've got a tuner there. Place to work, and this is just my kitchen table. So anywhere will do. Let's do this. All right, first things first, we got to get these strings off this guitar. So grab your string winder, or you can do it by hand if you want carpal tunnel, and just loosen the strings off. I'm going to take them all off at one time. You can change them one by one if you want, but I find this way just to be faster and easier. So do that. So now, if you've got your clippers handy, go ahead and use them to clip off the ends of these. You don't have to, you can fish these through the other end, but it's just easier if you cut off all the squiggly parts. That way you're not fighting them. That's what I do. Clip them off. There we go. So now on this other end, we're going to take those strings, kind of flip the guitar over and fish them through. I've got the back plate off of here, but you can still fish them through, or just take off the back plate, that's fine. And so you can do a couple at a time, go one by one, doesn't really matter. So pull those out of there. Bam, done. Now this is a good time in the process to kind of wipe down your guitar or clean it now that you got the strings off, like right in here. There'll be dust and things, so I'm gonna just kind of wipe that down. This is obviously not a pristine guitar, so I don't really care too much, but wipe things down if you want, and we'll go from there. So now that you have the strings off your guitar, let's grab your new set of strings, pull them out of the packaging. Some of them are labeled. Some companies label them. These are not labeled, but they do have this color coding. So you'll see I've got brass, red, purple, silver, black, green, and consult your packaging to know which string goes where. That's kind of important. You want to make sure you get the right string in the right place. So they also are going to go by thickest to thinnest. So if that helps you out, you can look at it that way too. So now you want to flip your guitar over and feed it through this side of the guitar, and it's going to be reversed. So this side is going to be your bass side, and this will be your treble. So thick strings, thin strings. You got to kind of fish it through. Some of them you got to get past some angles and stuff, so it might be a little tedious, but just kind of go slow and you'll be able to fish the strings through from this side. So now grab your string. I'm going to start bass to treble, so this is the low E, and I'm going to feed it through right here. It's probably going to fight me because I'm filming. You just want to feed it through. And my cat is underneath the table playing with the other end. So, just like that. Pull it all the way through. Flip the guitar over. Actually, I just like to feed them all through all at once. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. Alright, now that you've got the strings fished through the block, you want to take the other end, and these tuners are kind of weird. You can't just feed it through and start winding it down. You have to clip them, and you kind of have to clip them in the right order. Hi Roy, would you like to go away for me? Go away. Probably not. So it's kind of a guessing game. You gotta have to learn how much slack to put in something. Alright, yeah, I need to move him. Okay, cat's gone, I can focus. So like I was saying, you have to clip off the right amount of the string to feed down there and get your winds. So it's a little bit, you gotta start to know your guitar and figure out how much slack you want to put on it. But one way I like to measure it is, this is the tuner, the low E that we're stringing up. I'm gonna go on these style guitars where they have 6 on one side and they're more closely spaced than like a Gibson or something like that. I'm gonna go 2 tuners up that way. So for instance, if this is the tuner I'm working on, I'm going to go 1, 2, 2 tuners, and then you can kind of clip it in that general area. And You'll get better at it the more you do it, but that's a good starting point. So grab your clippers, clip it off in that ish area, get rid of that end. And this is the fun part. So I really like these style tuners. They're really easy. You just take this end and stick it down in the hole. And then move the string to one side. There's a slot going through the top of the tuner. And so once it's moved to the side, you can just start winding away. So I'm going to grab my winder. And what you want to do, if your tuners are on this side of the headstock, to tighten the string, you want to wind this direction. So that is counterclockwise. Yes, counterclockwise. So start winding that direction. If you don't do that and you wind it the other way, then your angles and stuff are all going to be wrong. And so like 99% of guitars are going to wind that way to tighten down, unless you have like an old vintage bass or something like that. So here we go, winding down, and I'm using my finger to keep downward pressure on the string. So I'll try to show you this. As I'm winding down, I want this side of the string to continuously go down. Like the coils should be winding down. And the reason I do that is for break angle. I'll explain that in just a second. So now I've got a note, doesn't have to be tuned up, and I've wound it. Let me get you a closer view here. So you can see that this is going down, and it's underneath. Good camera work there. It's underneath the rest of the windings. That's what you want. So why exactly do you want the windings to go down instead of up? Well, like I said, it's called break angle. And what that is the angle that the string makes as it goes from kind of flat right here, straight, and this angle as it goes down. That's called break angle. And you want break angle because that gives you pressure on the nut. This is called the nut. So you want the string to be hitting this front edge of that nut. And so imagine if this end of the string were it just stayed pretty flat, or obviously if it were up right here, it wouldn't even make a note. So if this stayed pretty flat, there wouldn't be a lot of tension or pressure on this point. And that's what gives you a nice clean note. So I'll explain Fenders specifically. Their headstock, like this part, is pretty much right in line with the rest of the fingerboard. So you really want to wind it down to create that break angle. If you've got something like a Gibson or any kind of headstock that has this angle to it, acoustics too, then that's really less of an issue because that break angle is kind of made into the guitar because the headstock's that way. But Fenders and these style Fender guitars are going to be pretty flat. And so you want to really especially wind them down and put extra slack on the strings for the D and the G. On this guitar, it doesn't matter because I have what are called string trees. That's these things right here, and the string goes underneath them. And so what that does is that creates that break angle. So it goes here and it has to go down to get under these. And the reason they added those is because of this flat headstock for Fenders. If sometimes if you don't wind it down enough, or even if you do sometimes, you play an open note and it just kind of buzzes and doesn't sound super clear because there's not enough pressure from the string on the nut right there. So I'll show you how we kind of treat these a little different, assuming you don't have string trees. Okay, so the A string is going to be the same thing, more or less. And also to point out, you want to make sure that you've taken up all the slack from this end when you're starting. So the string will, it'll give. You want to pull it until it's tight against the tremolo block. That's pretty important. So that way you know you're working with the proper amount of slack. So let's do this again. We've got the A string right here. Same deal. I'm working on this tuner. I'm gonna go 1, 2 tuners up, clip it right there. Then take this end, stick it in the hole, move it to the side, get my winder, using my finger to keep downward pressure on it. So as I'm winding, this end is going to be below the windings. And I am winding in a counterclockwise direction. Here we go. It's all looking good. Get the string in the slot right there. And just go till you kind of hear a note. I'm not tuning it up just yet. And with this method, you should have about 2 to 3 windings on the post. That's about what you want for these. And we're going to get into what makes these different right now. Let's deal with the differences with these tuners, or really only if you don't have string trees. And so for sake of demonstration, I'm just going to remove this string tree. Most Fender style guitars will have 1 string tree just for the B and the E. This one has 2. Some don't even have any string trees. The newer ones, they have staggered tuners. So like this tuner is flatter or doesn't come up as tall as the bass one. So they stagger down. That's what staggered tuners are called, and that's why they have them. But so for sake of demonstration, I'm just going to remove this because your guitar probably looks a little bit more like that anyway. All right. So I have my D string. Now, I don't see people talk about this a lot, and I think it's a pretty important thing. So, normally, you know, I said you go 2 tuners up, clip it there, and that gives you about 2 windings. But I want a lot more windings on this D to make more of an angle. So what I normally do is I go about to the end of the headstock. You can go more as well. Like I said, you kind of have to learn your guitar. And so in this general area for me, I'm going to take my clippers, clip them off. And another thing, you can always clip more string. You can't add string. So if you're worried about it, you know, start and give yourself a lot of room to keep clipping back. But here we go. Stick it in the slot, move it to the side, grab my winder. While pushing down, I'm winding in a counterclockwise direction. And this will take a little longer because I've got more string to wind. But just keep at it. Invest in an electric winder, perhaps. And once you start to get there, make sure that the string is in the nut slot. All right, now I have a note, and I've put more windings on it. So let's take a look at that. So you can see how now, the first ones I did, just 1 or 2 windings. This one, it put me a lot more windings, and I'm almost bottomed out down there. And that's really what I want, because you can't really go lower than that. So I want this string to be coming down about there. So you can see if I didn't do that, this D string would be maybe more up here. Now, it doesn't look like a lot, but it can make a difference. If you don't want to do this, you don't have to. I'm just sharing, that's the word, my experience. So do this if you have these kind of issues where you're not getting a clean open note. That could be one of the reasons, is that you're not winding enough winds on your post. So I'm going to do the same thing with the G, and again, I want to go about to the end right there. Now for the D, I said I go about to the end of the headstock, but since the G is, you know, even farther that direction and the string is thinner, I'm going to go past the end of the headstock. So maybe about in this, you know, an inch, 2 inches, maybe something like that past the headstock, that is. So clip it off and stick it in the hole. Same deal as before. Move it to the side, pressure on it, yada yada. As you're winding, we contemplate the complexities of life and how my cat is rather upset that I moved him to the bathroom for filming this. He'd be all up in my business if I didn't. He'll be fine. So, now we are coming up on tension. Pictures in the slot. Get a note. And that's that. So let's take a look at the windings on this one. So you can kind of see I had a little bit more space where I could have wound more on it, but that looks pretty good to me. And that's why I treat the D and the G differently. So I'm going to go back to this style where I'm not giving a lot of windings on it because I've got string trees right there. And that's going to create that break angle I was talking about. So windings aren't super important. I'm going to go back to not a lot of slack. So yeah, if you want to think of it like 2 tuners ahead, I'm just going to go about to the end of the headstock. Clip it. Same deal. So now that I've got that, I'm just going to do the last one, the E. Oh, I didn't mention, you actually want to go under the string tree. That's what they're there for. So I didn't show that, but that's what you want to do. Again, clip the string like that. Now here's another tip for you. I don't just normally do this, but if you're playing your guitar and you've been restringing it and you notice that the string just keeps slipping on you, no matter how much you stretch the strings or play it or tune it, it just keeps going flat. It could be that the actual string is slipping right here. And that's the only thing I don't really like about these kind of tuners, is that it's possible for that to happen. Like I said, it doesn't normally happen in playing if you do it correctly, but it can. So one thing I will do is, all right, so we've got the string in the post. Move it to the side. I'm going to start winding it. Now one thing I will do is when I go around to the other side of the slot, I will come back through, like move the string through the slot like that. And what that does is if your guitar has that problem where things keep slipping, you can try this and that will usually help the problem. There are a couple of guitars I work on out on the road that I just know that they give like that, and so I'll automatically wind sometimes the B and the E, but it's more of a problem on your treble side strings because they're thinner and don't have as much just rigidity to them. So I don't know if I can even show you what that looks like, but it's not going to pick up super well, but you can see I went through that slot one time. Now, before you start really tuning the guitar up to pitch and putting a lot more tension on the strings, now is a good time to look at your saddles. Roy, get off the table. Go away. Thank you. I had to let him out. He was destroying everything and making a mess. So you can see the string is coming up through the slot here, and you have some room on this saddle. These little pieces are called saddles, that you can use your finger and like move, you know, the string kind of up and back. These all look pretty good to me. But you want to usually make sure that the string is centered with the hole that it came up through. So that one looks good. They all look pretty centered to me. But that will have a tiny effect on your string spacing. You know, you want to generally even spacing from string to string. It's not quite that simple, but that's what you want. So just take a look at it. You know, make sure your windings are all cool. Everything's in the slot. You don't have a string sticking out the other end of your block right here. That was a good time to check all that. So after you've checked that, where you can start tuning it up, grab your tuner of choice. If you got perfect pitch, fantastic. I'm a little jealous, but I'm gonna use a cable and this tuner right here, which is very much my preferred tuner. Love this thing. I'll probably do a video on it because it's just that fantastic. Headstock tuners work great, but now you can just tune it up to pitch. Really quickly, a couple more things to think about. If you're plugging in like this, obviously your volume has to be on before you get any signal to your tuner. And also, if your guitar has a tremolo, like this Strat, this piece is called a tremolo, and you can set them up a couple different ways. This is what's called floating. So you can see that there's a gap underneath this piece and the top of the guitar. That's what's called a floating tremolo, so it's kind of just in balance with the tension of the strings. So as you're tuning it up, this is going to keep getting more tension on the strings and keep coming up like that, and you'll have to retune the guitar just because things are going to go flat as this comes up. So you have to go through the tuning, you know, check all your strings, tune it, then it's going to go flat, check them, tune them, blah, blah, blah. All that kind of stuff. So that's something to keep in mind there if your guitar has a tremolo like this. If it's not floating, it can be on the body, in which case this will be flush on the top of the guitar. That's fine too. This amount of gap right there is about good. You don't want to see your trem like sitting way high up in the air. If it is, you got problems. It could be like you went up in string gauge and now there's more pressure from the strings, and now, you know, you got to compensate for that. That's something else, but if it's sticking way high in the air, you got problems, but that can be addressed. I'll show that in some other video. And that's all there really is to stringing your guitar. Now, one other thing I'll talk about, this isn't, I don't know if everybody's going to believe me. I talked about this in my acoustic restringing video. You can check it if you want. But the last thing I'll do is kind of give a little bit of pressure right here. I'll go like that, like that. And the reason I do that is because you see the string comes up through the body and breaks over this saddle. Now, the string wants to follow a semi-straight line because it has just some rigidity to it. So as it comes up, if you don't do that, even up to tension, your string will have this curve, so it'll look like that, even over the saddle. It won't be like straight up, break, and then flat. And so the reason I push this down is to get it to have not that little curve at the top, a little more flat. And the reason I do that is because in my experience I found that it helps with the intonation on guitar. Like I'll do it this way without pushing them down and tune it up. On the tuner it's all fine, and then you play a chord, you move up the neck, and the intonation's a little out. So intonation is just how in tune something is as you fret it up for like the whole neck of the guitar, not just an open string. So sometimes you tune it perfectly, you play a chord and you're like, that doesn't sound great. It could be a couple different things, to be honest, but sometimes it is this. So I will push those down. I'll do the same thing right here, just, kind of push them a little bit. Now what I don't want to do is put this nasty, huge bend in, like this dink in the string. Dink, is that a word? I don't know. You don't want to do that because that can cause other problems, but just a little bit of pressure right there, and then it's all good. So I hope this helped you out, just showing you a couple of things I do maybe a little differently from some people. I know there's other information out there, but those are some things that I do a little differently, sharing my information with you. And now you can get those rusty things off of there, put new fresh strings on there, tune it up, rock out, play some music, because that's what this is all about, right? Unless you're me and you're a professional guitar tech, in which case, this is what it's all about. But anyway, have a good day, play some music, see ya.